I really did used to think that you had to get rid of certain experiences. There were some emotions and experience that were just too overwhelming, and I had to do emotional work to process it, to get rid of it so it never came up again, which is very interesting because it can actually be effective to process the emotion. Because if the mind is constantly caught in a turbulent storm of repressed emotional material, it can actually be a hindrance that throws you into mind identification quite readily. But until you clear out some of that space through emotional work, it seems like it actually makes it quite complicated. So we need to clear out enough space and room in order to accommodate a more tranquil state of being that can then essentially do more penetrating self-inquiries into the nature of identity. But it's so interesting though, having gone from doing the shadow work to now where more and more, and it is very dynamic, this shadow work still happens, but that's just another wave in the ocean of consciousness of potential phenomena happening. So shadow work can happen, and yet it feels much more impersonal because I allowed myself to get really personal with the shadow work. So, right, I'll just reference this morning. I noticed a poor kid at school who had a mother essentially dropping him off, and this kid was having a really challenging time. I'm talking like he was really traumatized being left going to school. And the mother, unfortunately, was essentially saying to him, like, to literally quote her, "Don't cry, stop crying, go in there, I can see your teacher, go." And which is just really, it's pretty heartbreaking to see, to know the effect that sort of denial of a truthful emotional expression can have on a child. It's basically conditioning into them, like, don't show this emotion's bad, which is going to lead to all sorts of mental difficulties later down if it's done chronically. But anyway, it takes one event sometimes to do that sort of stuff. Nonetheless, that had an effect on me, seeing that, feeling what that child was feeling, probably interwoven with my own shit, but there's not much separation or distinguishing between, oh, that's his stuff and that's my stuff. Now it's just what's happening. I think previously I would have tried to get rid of that, but rather there's an allowance of just feeling that discomfort, just feeling that utter helplessness, that contraction. So if you reflect on your experience, is there any certain emotions that when you feel them, they brute force you and recruit you to employ all sorts of emotion work and shadow work techniques to get rid of? Or can there be an allowance of everything, even the resistance that says, I don't want to feel this at all? Because it is possible. It really is possible to be with anything. It's just we have to see the resistance patterns that are throwing us into the believing in the I don't want to feel this, that are otherwise unconscious. So it takes a bit of probing into the beliefs from a place of equanimity is much more helpful rather than being caught in the storm of mind. So like I've talked about, I found it incredibly helpful in my experience to, it's like when your mind is saying, I don't want to feel, I got to get away from this, which is okay. But when you really believe it, it creates a lot of suffering. So when you identify the views, all the different views operating in the back of the mind and bringing them in with loving awareness, that can clear the ground for these sorts of inquiries into the way that you're relating to experience. So let's take that example of with the child. If I was previously in a reactive place and I wanted to extract and get rid of and remove that experience from my system, I think a more appropriate or a more fundamental way to approach this, because we're never going to be able to fix the broken self, would be to slow down, notice that, okay, I'm feeling resistance and my mind is wanting to get rid of this experience really badly, and I can feel that. So let's identify all of the views and actually acknowledge them at the level of the body. So, okay, there's part of me that says, I don't want to feel this. All right, you can come in here, thank you. If I show this emotion to other people, I'll be rejected. Okay, you can come here. Acknowledging it in the body. If I show this emotion in front of children, they'll think that I'm a weak man or a weak mother. Okay, you can come in here. Right, so now I've identified all of the forgotten children that have been pushed away in the past. Thank you. You're all here. You've given them a warm blanket over their backs and a hot chicken soup and just lovingly welcome them in and been trying to keep you safe. You're not pushing them away, but you've just given them a voice and made the unconscious, conscious. And then you can probe into the more fundamental views from here. I don't want to feel this. I hate this. But you have to ask yourself, how am I viewing this emotion? What does this emotion say? Like, what does this mean about me? Why can't I experience this emotion? What belief do I have that says I can't experience this emotion right now? And it's going to feel really like you, really real, like it's the most real thing in the world. But that is why it keeps getting you. So when you start seeing that, you're like, oh wow, none of this is me. These are such impersonal, innocent inflections in consciousness that we just totally believe. It's like a magic spell. But when we really start to see like, oh wow, like that is what I was believing. That is what is operating. And true freedom is in just allowing it. And just, I think when you see it enough times, these sorts of beliefs, it starts to loosen their grip, and they start to feel more and more impersonal, yet simultaneously personal at the same time, which is kind of paradoxical, but they don't have the grip and the thrust into mind identification that they used to once have. So this can be done with, I'm telling you, anything in experience. Nothing is off limits with these sorts of inquiries. Even the most darkest parts of things like social anxiety, workplace anxiety, fraudulentness in daily life, whatever it is, or not being a good father, not being a good mother, they're really going to feel like you. But these sorts of inquiries take us right into the heart of them. And it has to be done with curious, loving acceptance, because nothing else will work. Like you're a curious plunderer into the nature of consciousness, with the sole mission of loving everything. Yeah. Let me know how that works for you, or if you found this helpful.